Nancy Drew Ransom of the Seven Ships is the 20th game in the Nancy Drew series. When Nancy's friend Bess gets kidnapped on a remote island in the Bahamas, it is up to Nancy to find the long-lost treasure the kidnappers demand. She discovers a mysterious journal that leads Nancy all around the island solving puzzles and springing booby traps. She also meets a mysterious lone man who may not be all that he seems. And although this is where the game begins, the real story begins much earlier. Spoilers. Duh. Captain General Juan Ignacio de Santa Anto Domingo, also known as El Toro, was an excellent navigator and naval war expert. So much so that the Spanish royalty trusted only him to transport their riches. The immense wealth on his ships made him the target for pirates, and thus needed to grow his defenses. By 1665, he commanded 7 ships and became legendary. While docked at Portobello, El Toro somehow acquired a carved map to Cibola, or the City of Gold. Anxious to get the map back to the king, El Toro set sail for Spain. However, the 7 ships would not make it far from Panama. Pirate Henry Morgan chased El Toro into a deadly hurricane. El Toro describes 2 of his ships succumbing to the storm, while the rest of the crew crashed on the shores of Dread Isle. With none of the other 5 ships sailable after the storm, all that was left for the remaining crew to do was wait to be rescued. El Toro realized that their rescuers might be pirates, so he tasked his crew to hide the map and the remaining treasure somewhere on the island. El Toro then takes to writing in code in a journal to keep track of the clues and pieces needed to find the valuable map. Firstly, El Toro and his crew found a safe space to store most of what they could recover from the ship. They then carved into the walls to mount 2 doors, one with a simple lock and the other with the most complicated lock in history. They also carved into the wall a place to hold a lockbox with a little of the treasure in it while hiding the code to open the safe and the items around the room. El Toro kept the knowledge of the order and drew them in the journal. He also kept the 2 keys needed in order to open the lockbox. Both of these keys had dual purposes. Both opened the lockbox, but only one would open the hidden safe, and the other could open the door out. One he kept on his person, and the other he would hide near the precious map in another more elaborate hiding place. El Toro could not have placed the map to Cibola in the lockbox. He needed it to be in a place where no one could just stumble upon it. He chose an underwater cave in the Blue Hole. His men carved the symbols into the tunnel so that they would not get lost as long as they had the key. El Toro wrote the way in and out of the tunnels in a hidden phrase in the journal, and his crew carved the symbol key on a stone slab. His crew somehow rigs this insanely elaborate safe, including a sun spotlight and a spinning display mount. El Toro mentioned that he had lost a lot of men to the Blue Hole, and I can only imagine it is because he insisted the treasure must be revealed in such a grand way that required so much engineering. And if all went to plan, he would have been the one to find it again after being rescued. So he wanted all of this drama just for himself. Anyway, after placing some of the treasure and the map in the hiding place, the hourglass door was also installed and the treasure key was placed on one of the hourglasses. In the journal, El Toro hints at the solution of all the hourglasses ending at the same time and hides the order in which they should be turned in bold letters on the page. To lock up the tunnel, El Toro's crew created a door with 6 dial locks. When in the correct positions, the tunnel would open up. But El Toro wanted to be the only one to know the order, so he hid clues for himself in the 2-rule code that the survivors followed. He writes in the journal that one must acquire 7 pieces in order to find the treasure. With the 2 ships sinking with their crews in the ocean, he gave away 5 dials to his crew to hide and kept the 2-rule code and 1 dial for himself. While looking for hiding places on the island, the crew discovered bat caves and climbed to the top to see around the island. They built a stand for their astrolabe, and El Toro marks in the journal how to find Half Moon Reef and Dove Isle. El Toro carves a key into the bottom of the astrolabe to further encode his writings. One of the crews took the astrolabe and their dial and put them in a chest from the Caridad. They buried it in the ruins of the ship, and El Toro marked it in the journal to honor the souls that were lost at sea. And if your soul was lost on the Castidad, well, fuck you, I guess. Another crew took their dial and scaled the caves to find one with friendly bats. They created a light system and a locking door for some reason. El Toro writes it was a safe haven for the crew. However, the cave almost kills Nancy. The crew takes the symbol key and their dial and bury it in the cave. The next crew were inspired by one of their cabin boys' wit when it came to lifting an enormous rock. With only pulleys and some rope, the crew lifted a large rock and hid their dial beneath it. And luckily for Nancy, the centuries-old length of rope remains in pristine condition. The fourth crew takes their dial to Half Moon Reef and locks it in this box. They hide the box in one of the nooks deep down in the reef and carve the symbols in the reef to confuse the jellyfish that are down there. El Toro marks that the chest is hidden behind the symbol for death, and eventually, a very greedy octopus makes the death nook its home. The last crew takes an intricate lockbox with cutout plates and buries it with their dial. They scatter the required plates around Shark Cove and carve another plate into a map to find where the device is hidden, as well as the shape needed to solve the puzzle. Not fully satisfied yet, the crew travels to Dove Isle, where they make a memorial to the Etosha and hide the carved plate inside. The Etosha was a ship that suffered a similar fate to theirs. The Etosha was carrying valuable cargo and got shipwrecked on an island after a hurricane. The Etosha crew was rescued, and El Toro had the hopes that they would be as well. Along with the carved plate, El Toro hid the 2 rules code in the memorial while writing his hopes in the journal. All of this the survivors do within 10 years, until El Toro is the last alive. He takes the last of the dials, hides that and the journal somewhere maybe around the future monkey center of the island, then chooses to pass away with the final key in his hand and his arm outstretched. Sometime after El Toro's death, the monkeys must have found the journal and kept the dial for themselves. This is hinted at with the monkey paw print on the page. They steal many unnecessary items, and Nancy gets to keep playing these stupid arcade games to get them back. Seriously, between the nonsense games and the frustratingly slow traveling, I'm convinced her interactive just needed to add to the runtime, because this was a pretty quick game. What makes it so especially quick is that there are only 2 people to talk to, and even when you do, you don't need to talk to them for long. A replayer's dream. Centuries later, in the modern age of 2009, Dread Isle is home to a monkey research center and an ecotourism resort. The owners of the resort, the Gibsons, find a half-fathom-tall staff El Toro's crew once had and uses it for their new parrot's perch. The parrot, who somehow has a lineage worth noting on the wall.
Grandma Lulu, pretty bird, Grandma Lulu. Ah!
Please stop, I'm getting war flashbacks. Actually, there are a lot of homages to the past games on the island, which is nice and sort of kind of hints that the culprit may be somebody from Nancy's past, in a meta kind of way. One of the men who worked at the Monkey Research Center later did some volunteer work at a prison, and locked up in that prison was Dwayne Powers. Oh, spoilers for Stay Tuned for Danger as well. After countless murder attempts on a soap opera set, Dwayne Powers, former TV agent, was doing hard time in prison when a volunteer befriended him and shared a mysterious encoded journal with Dwayne. Though it is not confirmed, the only person we know for sure worked at the Monkey Research Center was Sunny June. And it seems very plausible that he would find a journal like El Toro's very interesting and that it could possibly lead to the City of Gold. When the 2 try to decode the journal to no avail, Dwayne then formulates his plan. When he's released, he takes the journal and a boat to Dread Isle. He waits for the Gibsons to close down the resort for hurricane season, then tries looking for the treasure himself. We see this because he accidentally leaves his fake ID in the caves. Dwayne then remembers the young girl detective who put him behind bars, so he formulates a plan to get Nancy to Dread Isle. He buries the journal, writes the ransom note with the clues on how to find it, writes the Gibson note telling the girls to go to Sangre Beach, and sets up a fake sweepstakes for Bess to win. George and Bess arrive, and Bess takes a golf cart to see the sunset like the note tells them to do. Dwayne then kidnaps Bess, probably with the trap that Nancy falls for, twice, and he hides her in a cave that he then covers with a large rock. He then waits in his disguise for Nancy. George, totally freaked out, tries to work on the broken satellite phone until Nancy arrives. Nancy then takes to zooming all around the island and catching the wind in the ocean and solving all the puzzles. Puzzles that took 10 years to manifest are solved within an afternoon for Nancy Drew. She finds the map to Cibola and hands it to the one and only person on the island that could possibly be the culprit. This is not one of Nancy's finest bits of detective work. And I feel like the treasure found in the final room is like a consolation prize because Nancy literally lets Dwayne and the map get away. But Bess gets to live another day so that she can eat ice cream and do nothing, or go on a game show and do nothing. You know, only important things. Anyway, that was Nancy Drew, Ransom of the Seven Ships. Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments, and if you don't mind hitting the like button if you liked it, and subscribe for more videos. Bye!